Nickelodeon All Star Brawl is finally out, and we finally got some reviews pouring in for the game. What do critics think about this game, and do we agree or disagree with them? Let's discuss right now. Hey beautiful humans, my name is RidersDX. Welcome to my channel where today I'm all about Nick All Star Brawl today. Honestly, I've been playing this game non-stop for the past week. It's been awesome. I'm having a really fun time with it. But do critics agree with me or disagree with that? Because I was always kind of interested in what critics were going to say about this game, because there's always a bit of a gap in terms of quality when it comes to licensed games in the eyes of critics, and so I wasn't really sure how they were going to review this game, but we finally got some reviews, and so I've got a good mix of positive and negative comments from reviewers, so we're going to go through all of them, and then we can kind of discuss at the end whether or not we agree or disagree with them. And so, are these reviews going to be reasonable, or are we going to get some bad blood between us and critics? Let's find out. The first review I want to go into is IGN's review, and so they had a lot of positive and negative things to say about the game, and so one thing that they mentioned very early on was that they felt the game was especially made on a tight budget.
The first thing that comes across while playing All Star Brawl is that it feels like a game made on a pretty tight budget. The character models and backgrounds lack detail, the original themes made for each level are extremely generic, there's just one bare-bones single-player arcade mode, a barely worth mentioning sports mode, and zero meaningful unlockables or progression rewards outside of just some images and songs in a jukebox. But perhaps the most damning thing of all is that, despite being a game all about celebrating Nickelodeon's finest, there's very little Nickelodeon charm that comes through. There's no voice acting, no remixes of any themes from the many cartoons featured, and while the stages are littered with fun Easter eggs for fans to discover, it all just feels kind of soulless.
But then they went on to praise the actual gameplay and some of the unique additions it brings to the table compared to other platform fighters. Smash, I guess, if that's one you want to talk about.
It's an impressive come-from-behind victory then that All-Star Brawl is still really fun to actually play. It follows the same basic formula as other platform fighters by removing life bars in favor of damage percentages. The more you get hit, the higher your damage percentage, and the further you'll go flying from every hit until you're KO'd by an opponent knocking you off the stage, unless you turn on critical KOs. This means two key things. You can potentially be killed after taking hardly any damage, or you can survive even after taking an enormous amount of punishment. It's a really exciting style of action where it feels like you always have a chance to make a miraculous comeback even if you're down multiple lives. This style of fighting game really comes alive in a party environment with up to 3 friends, and All Star Brawl is no different. It's super easy to pick up, be given minimal instructions on how to play, and have a good time regardless of your experience level.
They also love some of the more complex mechanics, clearly targeting Smash veterans.
That said, the developers are clearly huge Smash fans themselves because they've designed the deeper mechanics behind that approachable coat of paint with more hardcore fans of those games in mind. Where All Star Brawl sets itself apart is primarily in its movement. It's exceptionally fast-paced, facilitated by high run speeds, speedy recoveries on most attacks, and its unique air dash that functions as a recovery option, a wave dash, and a fast fall all in one. The air dash allows you to dash left and right for a quick, substantial boost of horizontal momentum that you can still perform actions out of, or in any direction downwards for an even larger burst of speed. The downside is that it's specifically an air dash and not an air dodge, which means that there's no invulnerability frames on it. It's a trade-off worth making though. I love the extra mobility given to every character thanks to this unique take on the traditional air dodge mechanic. It allows for unpredictable approaches, greatly aids characters who would otherwise struggle immensely with their recoveries while trying to get back to the stage after a big hit, and works as a great tool to play mind games with your opponent and keep them guessing at what you might do.
They also praise the amount of stages that are in the game, but not necessarily the quality of them.
Each character comes with their own stage, a total of 20 in all, which is a pretty decent number of arenas. Except when you consider that the number of stages you'll actually want to visit is probably much lower than that. Whether you're playing competitively or casually, most of the gimmicky stages just aren't fun to fight on. You're often going up against the stage more than you're going up against your friends, as you try to keep up with rapidly moving tiny platforms in the Space Madness stage, or avoid roller coaster cars on the 2 solid bits of land in the Glove World stage. Just to name 2 frustrating examples. These types of levels aren't anything new, but they don't have that kind of visual spectacle that makes that sort of sacrifice worth it. The handful of stages that are worth playing on are the ones you've probably come to expect. Relatively flat and straightforward stand-ins for Smash's iconic Final Destination, Battlefield, Smashville, and so on. That said, while most of the gimmick levels are a nightmare, there are a few that can be pretty fun given the right circumstances. The showdown at Teeter Totter Gulch level from Rugrats is a personal favorite of mine because its teetering central platform isn't too intrusive and provides a nice change of pace. And even though it's a little too hard to get kills on because of its enormous size, the Powdered Toast Trouble level is packed with fun interactables and Ren and Stimpy Easter eggs.
GamesPew also put out a review and they gave the game a 7 out of 10, and so they actually had some mixed thoughts on the character roster. There's an interesting roster of characters here, bringing familiar faces from a range of Nickelodeon properties. Some are strange choices though, with lead characters missing. From Rugrats there's only Reptar, but at least here the omission of the babies makes sense. Having babies fight against each other is probably in bad taste. But, for example, there's only Helga from Hey Arnold and Oblina from Ah Real Monsters. As nice as it is to have these franchises included, more characters would have been welcome. I suppose we can keep our fingers crossed for some DLC character packs if the game proves successful. They did go on to praise how unique and in-depth each character was, however. Each character has their own range of moves and, surprisingly, they are fairly in-depth. Pushing the face buttons will see your characters perform light, heavy, and ranged attacks, but combos and more complex button presses will allow you to perform fancier moves. It's the type of game that's very easy to pick up regardless of your skill level, but only those who take the time to master it will truly reign victorious. It's a level of depth that I'm pleasantly surprised to see. Every character plays slightly differently too, and so you'll undoubtedly find your preferred characters rather quickly. Michelangelo and Leonardo are fun to play and thanks to their sword skills, while Reptar's long distance fire breathing attack and fire ground sweep make him a rather powerful fighter. Even Oblina, the black and white cane-shaped monster from Ah Real Monsters, packs a good punch for a small size if you take the time to learn her moves. Hey Poor Player gave the game a 3.5 out of 5 stars, and so they had a lot of praise for the mechanics of the game as well. All Star Brawl is far faster than recent Smash games, giving it a frantic energy that takes a bit of getting used to. Yet once I did, I loved how tight the controls were, and most characters' moves provided a ton of options in combat. Throws are the same for all characters and kind of useless for that matter. Heavy attacks are assigned to a separate button, which I've actually come to really like. Jumping has to be done using a dedicated button. That's an option in Smash, but you can also jump there with a joystick. I'm so used to doing that even now, I'll often try instinctually do so. By the time I realize it isn't going to work and I move on to the jump button, it's sometimes too late. That's a me problem though, not necessarily an issue for the game. However, they did feel the game was trying to cater to too many audiences. For all those changes though, there's no mistaking the inspiration behind this title. Smash players will pick it up and feel comfortable very quickly. Inspiration is everywhere, from character moves to levels clearly inspired by specific levels in Smash. When everything feels this good, that's not really a problem since only one of the many platforms Nickelodeon All Star Brawl is coming to has Smash as a competitor anyway. What is more of a problem though, is that All Star Brawl can't seem to figure out who it wants to be for. Fighting mechanics can get surprisingly complex for a game about Nickelodeon characters. The developers have been talking about things like wave dashing, which to be fair, is intuitive here and feels good. These are advanced techniques though, clearly aimed at drawing the attention of the competitive Smash community. It seems to have worked as, at the time of this writing, many of the most prominent Smash players in the world are checking this one out on Twitch. Yet, it feels at times like they lost sight of the fact that this is still a Nickelodeon game. I'll definitely have something to say about that at the end of this video. Nintendo Life also reviewed the game, giving it a 7 out of 10. They liked the movesets but criticized originality and especially the lack of explanation of them.
All the moves are easy to perform and each of the characters' moveset is unique to them. The movesets on offer aren't as varied or original as we'd like, however. For example, Aang from the excellent Avatar The Last Airbender features moves only suitable for close quarters, which feels distinctly odd given his favored fighting techniques in his own media. There's definitely been some serious consideration to have characters represent their source media, a personal highlight of ours being Ren and Stimpy throwing log from Blam ammo, but many other moves of each fighter feel like they were developed simply because they had slots to fill. Many of the moves on show are rather simple attacks, but some have deeper mechanics at play, all of which are well executed and satisfying to master. What isn't so satisfying, however, is the explanation of these moves in-game, or more specifically, the lack of them. Most moves are self-explanatory, others have a brief explanation that is serviceable, others don't do a good enough job of explaining things, but worst of all, some aren't even listed. Toph, for example, has a down special that is a sort of a front flip with a heavy iron boot, but when she's in the air, she creates a floating platform of earth, and the latter is not listed in her moveset list at all. Presentation.
Nintendo Life actually praised the game's balance in catering to casual audiences and more experienced players, which is in direct contrast to the previous review.
Playing styles. The game shines its brightest in classic one-on-one bouts against another player, and pleasingly, this is just as much fun online as off. The target audience is likely to be mostly interested in playing as Spongebob and beating up Patrick, but there is clearly a drive towards appealing to a completely different set of players. You know, the sort who knows what DACA stands for. Consideration has been taken to make sure this subset of fighting fans is properly catered to, but without overwhelming the more casual audience. Things can get a bit hectic at times, but that's part of the fun, and the intentional inclusion of fan-favorite bugs-cum features like wave dashing helps to really give the combat its own unique and slick feel.
They also had some very positive feedback about the online play.
Online boasts custom lobbies, quick play to slap you right into the fray with someone else, and competitive play that restricts the stages that can be chosen, as well as employing a simple ranking system. All except the custom lobbies appear to be restricted to one-on-one bouts, but as we feel we've made abundantly clear, this is easily where the game is best. It allows for more stable connections, and we can't imagine many instances where you'd want to play with 4 people, except when you're with friends anyway, so we're not complaining. Online matches are also pleasingly smooth, with very little in the way of latency. We did experience a single match which seemed to run at about 15 frames a second and removed basically all of the particle effects. No idea what was going on there, but it was absolutely the exception to an otherwise joyous online experience.
Metro gave the game the lowest score that I've seen for it so far, a 6 out of 10, and so they criticized how the game isn't very welcoming to new players. As such, Nickelodeon All Star Brawl feels oddly catered towards Smash purists. If you found Nintendo's fighter too intimidating or complex to pick up and play at parties, this feels more fiddly and difficult to explain to casuals. It's made worse by the game's lack of effort to onboard new players, with the entirety of its tutorial sidelined into a laborious and off-putting 29-page slideshow that's unforgivable by modern standards. They also criticized the character roster, but they were very harsh in something that technically hasn't even happened yet. Some of the omissions, however, come off as cynical attempts to cash in on DLC. The only representative from Rugrats is Reptar, which feels odd when SpongeBob SquarePants has 3 in the form of SpongeBob, Patrick, and Sandy Cheeks. Helga represents Hey Arnold without Arnold himself, and there's no nods for the Fairly Odd Parents, Jimmy Neutron, or Rocko's Modern Life. There's always going to be the personal BS bias over the roster, but as a well-rounded representation of Nickelodeon's past and present, too many classics feel purposefully overlooked to sell season passes. They also criticized the game's presentation, calling it soulless. The game's presentation carries soulless baggage too. There's no recognizable music or voice work from any of the shows, with matches instead opening up with bland text exchanges which might as well not be there. It gives the whole experience a cheap knockoff quality and misses half the reason why fans are excited to see these characters fight in the first place. Why bother to include Nigel Thornberry if he isn't going to snigger smashing after every KO? Push Square gave the game a 7 out of 10, and they had a lot of praise for all the callbacks and mechanics of the game. You hit hard and fast, with movement that's snappy and responsive. Characters are beautifully rendered and animated, but in a way that doesn't intrude on the fighting action. It's enormous fun clocking all the gags. Patrick Star, for example, has his iconic "Is this the Krusty Krab? No, this is Patrick" telephone slam as his side heavy attack. This kind of fan service is laced throughout the whole game, with each of the 20 stages laden with references. We love Mr. Horse space jogging by in Ren and Stimpy's Space Madness arena. Unlike its inspiration, there are no items, but this isn't a bad thing as it forces you to get better rather than rely on lucky drops. They did complain about the game's lack of content. Why then is the score at the bottom of this review not higher? Well, we're speculating, but we think there's a budgetary issue here. Menus are simply static images, and there are only a few modes: arcade, offline, and online multiplayer, along with a sports bar variant that reminded us of Rayman Legends Kung Foot. There's a gallery wherein you can unlock single images with no way to zoom in on them. Pointless. All the characters and stages are available from the start, so there's nothing to strive for. Worst of all, the game features absolutely no voice acting. Yep, none. not even grunts or groans. It's baffling. Unfortunately, these issues make the product feel cheap, which does the quality of the actual fighting a tremendous disservice. Again, it's the best Smash clone we've ever played, we just wish Nickelodeon had shown some confidence in it. The last review I'm going to bring up here is Game Explains, who gave the game a mixed rating, and so they did have some mixed thoughts on the game's art style.
Once I got into gameplay, I realized that the characters themselves look a little bit strange. In battle, you might see what I'm talking about. The characters fighting together is cool, and as a crossover, it's a great idea, but the game is just kinda awkward. It just has this weird look to it. Which is a little disappointing since seeing someone like Danny Phantom fight alongside Aang and Korra seems like it would be mind-blowing. Instead, it looks like they were just thrown together. It's less of an awesome clashing of different styles like Smash, and more of just a messy look. I think if the game went for a more cartoony art style like cell shading, it would really bring the visuals together, similar to how Dragon Ball FighterZ emulates the look of Dragon Ball Z.
They did chat a little bit about the single player modes and talked about the lack of a story synopsis in particular.
You have arcade mode, battle mode, and online mode. Arcade mode is your typical run of fighting enemies to a certain point that we've seen in plenty of fighting games. If you find it too easy, there are options to change the difficulty level, which changes the amount of stocks you and your opponent has. Unfortunately, there is no boss fight at the end of the run either, so you end up with a mode that kinda feels pointless since you're not working toward a tough enemy at the end of it all, but at least the option is there anyway. Another thing I found interesting is the interaction between your character and your enemy at the beginning of the fight in arcade mode. They'll say a quick line, but it's not really directed towards you, and it's just a random line that doesn't really fit the situation. It would have been nice to see the characters truly talk to each other. It would make the whole crossover aspect feel much better. Another thing I would have liked to see is some sort of explanation on how they came together to fight in the first place. I'm not saying to do an entire story mode, but a story synopsis or something like that would have been really nice to see.
Probably the most surprising thing for me about this review though is that they had a lot of praise for the music, which I've kind of seen mixed comments about in particular in pretty much every other review.
Last thing I want to touch on is the music. It's good, like surprisingly good. The main thing kind of sticks in your head and really gets you hyped for the game. I found myself often sitting on the home screen just to listen to it for a bit. Another song that I really grew fond of is the version 1 losing theme. It sounds so good for a losing theme, and it stands out from the rest of the game's music. A couple other highlights for me were Omashu from Avatar, the Ghost Zone from Danny Phantom, and the Technodrome from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. In my opinion, the music is easily one of the best parts of the game.
So that was all the reviews I collected for this video, and I gotta say, it's kind of a lot of what I was expecting, you know. When I was playing the game myself, I thought the mechanics was so well done, and it got really easy for me to get into. And this is coming from someone who's not really a great Smash player. Like, I always felt kind of intimidated by Smash just because it seemed so complex and there were so many things to do. But I don't know, if you spend some time trying to get to know the mechanics of one of these kind of games, like, you slowly kind of get more eased into it and it becomes a lot more addicting than you intended. And so I think that's what's happening to me with Nickelodeon All Star Brawl. You know, I'm just playing it non-stop and I'm just really getting used to all the mechanics and like kind of developing my own playstyle and all that, and it's just a lot of fun. And so I'm kind of starting to fall in love with the overall Smash formula in general by playing this game, because I don't know, it's been kind of difficult for me to get into Smash games just because I feel like there's so much time you need to dedicate to them. But I don't know, I guess there's something really appealing to me about Nickelodeon characters being in this kind of setting that I just can't keep my hands off of. Now, I will say some of these reviews have kind of like interesting comments that I don't necessarily agree with. Like, there was one review in particular that talked about this game catering to too many audiences, which I don't think is a bad thing at all. You know, it's like, why does this game have to cater specifically to Nickelodeon fans versus Smash veterans? Why can't the game cater to both? You know, one great thing about Nintendo's own Smash Ultimate is that it's able to be picked up and played by so many new players, but at the same time, veterans can practice it non-stop and get really used to the mechanics and develop their own strategies. And so it's kind of the best of both worlds, and that's kind of one of the best qualities in Nintendo games, is that you can pick up and play it, but if you keep playing it, then you'll get more and more advanced and more masterful of the game's mechanics. And so I feel like that's what Nickelodeon All Star Brawl is trying to do as well. I don't think it does as good of a job as Smash does, but I still think it does a very respectful job. And so I didn't understand that comment at all. Like, I think that was just dumb. I'm sorry. And another thing that I wanted to comment on was that there was one review that talked about the fact that the lack of characters possibly means that they're going to try to like get a lot of profits out of DLC. And I'm just like, why are you criticizing something that hasn't even happened yet? Now, I'm not saying that that will or will not happen. I mean, we do know that there's DLC coming down the line. We have at least 2 confirmed characters that are going to be coming. We don't know how much it's going to cost and things like that, but this is a common practice that like all games do. I mean, have you looked at Mario Golf Super Rush in particular? Like that game is full on guilty about keeping content off of the main game to update DLC down the road. And so it's something that's very common. And so unless they criticize that in every single game, I don't think that's really fair to put on this game, especially since it hasn't even happened yet. And so I thought that comment was just ridiculous personally. But other than that, I feel like every other review and everything they had to say was kind of like reasonable to say at least. You know, I do feel like there is a overall lack of content in the game, and I wouldn't necessarily call it soulless, but I do think that like the lack of voice acting, the lack of like music from the franchises and stuff really did this game disservice. But I mean, I also understand that Nickelodeon probably put like a little to no budget into this game, and so that's probably the reason why you see a lot of these things. So I will say though, if we got a Nickelodeon Kart Racers 2, we're definitely going to get a Nickelodeon All Star Brawl 2. And so if the lift up from Kart Racers 1 to Kart Racers 2 is what we can expect for a sequel to this game, then I'm really excited, because you know, Nickelodeon Kart Racers 2 had its roster like doubled, and it has so many more courses and so many more references. And so if this game does well, then I can totally picture that happening, and we might actually get the All Star Brawl game that we really wanted with this one. You know, all the characters in the world, all the levels in the world, music from both the franchises and also original music, and maybe even voice acting. I mean, I don't know. The sky is high. I'm really looking forward to seeing what this game brings in the future. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I had to say. Thank you all so much. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you agree or disagree with these reviews? Let me know what review really stuck out to you in particular, and I'd be really interested in reading your thoughts. Give this video a thumbs up if you like it, and subscribe to this channel if you want to see more content on Nickelodeon All Star Brawl in the future, because I definitely do want to keep playing this game, and I'm brainstorming different ideas for content for the game as we go to the upcoming months. But alright y'all, this is Riders, riding out. Thank you so much for watching this video. Special shout out to my patrons, Killer Lemurs, Team Rattle Sign Gamer, Johnny Hinton Ortiz, Timebender, Trash Q, Claw80 Floor, and Mass Muner. These are my patrons / YouTube members. If you'd like to become a patron or YouTube member and get access to a whole bunch of different perks, then please check out the links in the description box below. But alright, this is Riders, riding out.